Hello and welcome to Swiftly Spoken, a fan-made Taylor Swift podcast in which we break down her lyrics, deep dive into full album retrospectives, and theorise about what may be coming next. We are your hosts, Lisa and Cameron, and today we're going to be attempting to compile lists of 10 essential Taylor Swift songs. This episode is inspired by a recent article written by Mary Siroky for Consequence of Sound. In their In 10 Songs series, they provide lists of 10 songs from popular artists' catalogues that act as doorways into their vast discographies. In the list made for Taylor, they included some essential songs that we both agreed acted as amazing gateways for newer fans, or some fans that maybe only like some of Taylor's projects and want to discover more. But we wanted to go a step further and challenge ourselves to make our own 10 song lists with more specific themes to them that we would somehow show to someone interested but has already looked or listened to Mary's list. So after listening to the Consequence of Sound list, they can come to our lists and then explore further into Taylor's music. Before getting into our own lists, firstly we wanted to discuss a bit about Mary Siroky's list for Consequence of Sound, because as we said, it is a great gateway into Taylor Swift's discography, and we think she made some really good choices. The 10 choices were Tim McGraw, 15, Enchanted, All Too Well, Wildest Dreams, I Don't Want to Live Forever, Delicate, Lover, August, and Willow. Starting off with Tim McGraw, I think this is an amazing choice as the first introduction to the introduction to Taylor. We've banged on about Tim McGraw many a time, but yes, it being her first ever proper single put out into the world is an amazing way to just kind of see her beginning. And I think definitely a great choice.
I think as well as the kind of reasoning for this choice as well, the fact that it's timeless in terms of a country song as well as a Taylor song, and kind of shows Taylor's vision of being a songwriter and being quite polished, I think is a really good start. That's kind of what opened Taylor up, and that's kind of the start of her career, and I think a good song to start with if if you're looking to discover Taylor or kind of expand your knowledge of her discography. I think it's a really, really good start.
For sure. And then it leads us to 15, which kind of does follow that singer-songwritery, very country moment in Taylor's career. And the explanation for this one I really love as well. The author's explanation as to why she chose 15 from Fearless as the song that you must listen to try and get into all of Taylor is that it does show a particular thing that many Taylor's fans have experienced, which is growing up with Taylor and her music and going through these particular milestones in life, 15 being one of them, or teenage years being one of them. And the song is really poignant for that time in your life. Even if you're looking back at it as a 30-year-old, as she was when she was re-recording, it's still, I don't know, it's still so honest. It still sounds so, the Abigail storyline running through it. It's such a good song because of that, in my opinion. Yeah,
I agree. And I think, as well, it really kind of, her explanation, and then the kind of the fact that what's 15 kind of represents in terms of the Fearless album, and then kind of Taylor's story and her friendship with Abigail, and then that continuing on into other songs later on in Taylor's career. I think that 15 is a really good pick as well, and shows kind of Taylor's good songwriting as well as that kind of just the storytelling element and the growing up with Taylor. I think it's really nice. Song, like you said, the milestones of 15 and 22 and all the different ages in between, is definitely something that as Taylor's fans, people feel. I think the reason why they feel quite connected is because they feel like Taylor's they've grown up with her, and she's described moments in their life very perfectly and very poetically, and I think 15 is a perfect example of that.
Next up we have Enchanted from Speak Now, and as the author says, Speak Now a lot of times does get lost in the shuffle. It gets lost in the greater discography of Taylor, so it must have been difficult to kind of pick out one as an introductory song because Speak Now is so lyrically heavy, but Enchanted, obviously it had a big moment last year as in TikTok. I do think it's a good way to take that and take the trends that have been coming out of it and use it as a gateway again to more singer-songwritery content, really.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Enchanted's quite a long song, really, but I think also the explanation of the kind of fairy tale themes in Taylor's early discography is something as well, that Enchanted is a massive standout, and I think Enchanted is just a standout in general in Taylor's kind of career. And it's hard with Speak Now because for me personally, I would have probably picked something like Sparks Fly, but with this explanation, I think that Enchanted makes sense. Including the fairy tale element and just the kind of build up of the song, and clearly it's been received well by the general public in general because of its, success on TikTok. So clearly, coming from people that maybe are looking from the outside in to Taylor's discography, maybe Enchanted is definitely a good kind of gateway.
Next up from Red, of course, we have All Too Well. I don't think any explanation is really needed here because...
Oh, yeah, it's pretty obvious, yeah. It is pretty obvious. And obviously the 10-minute version is kind of the one that... the author does say, either 10-minute or original.
Yeah.
But I think, either is kind of a good way. And this is a real standout in Taylor's discography. And if you're kind of creating a list of either the best top 10 Taylor Swift songs or top 10 Taylor songs that you need to listen to either be prepared for midnight or get into a discography, this one will be on any list.
Of course.
Like, All Too Well will be on every and any list. Like, it's got to be there. It really has. So, yeah, no explanation will be needed because just the fact it's there, that's its explanation.
It speaks for itself, honestly. The whole 10 minutes of it and just the history behind it, how it came to be, what it is now. It's just so poetic. And, yeah, as you said, no explanation is needed because it does really speak for itself. Next up from 1989, this one was quite an interesting pick. He chose Wildest Dreams.
Yeah, I was slightly surprised by this, because again, I think maybe in this place I would have picked something like Out of the Woods, or maybe Style. But I think, to be fair, again, the explanation for Wildest Dreams does make sense, and I suppose maybe kind of more of a slower... To be fair, a lot of the songs chosen so far are kind of more slower songs. We've got with All Too Well, Tim McGraw, 15, and even the majority of Enchanted. So I think maybe personally I would have maybe chose something a little bit more that kind of goes off to show a different side of Taylor's songwriting and a different side of her kind of sound, because Out of the Woods is this kind of massive moment. And then even with some of the later songs, they're kind of slightly slower and more subdued. So personally, I would maybe have picked one of those. How do you feel about this as a kind of gateway?
I do agree. I think 1989 is a strange album to pick something that you want people to hear, when 1989 is an album that I think almost everyone has at least heard, at least at the bare minimum, Shake It Off from, Blank Space, Bad Blood. It was such a big moment
Probably
that
Style.
Style. I don't think people missed it. So choosing Wildest Dreams because of that could have been a factor, but also obviously once again Wildest Dreams has been re-recorded, so we can get a Taylor's version in, and also it did have a big moment again on TikTok last year, so again another gateway that is perhaps easier for people who weren't around during the 2014 era but were around in the last couple of years and enjoyed that moment on TikTok. Again, I think it does have that in mind. But it is also interesting to see a not so recommended song being recommended, because again, if you just recommended Shake It Off here, most people could probably skip that because they would already know it. So I think that's why, really.
And have they probably have more of a preconceived idea of it, whereas maybe Wildest Dreams was one of the singles that, even though it was incredibly successful and has done well, people haven't maybe got, like Blank Space or Shake It Off, people already know and would be like, oh yeah, I know Taylor Swift, I know those songs.
Yeah.
And whereas maybe Wildest Dreams is one of the ones that slipped in the background a little bit.
Next up, we have the only song that is a non-album single on this list, which is I Don't Want to Live Forever with Zayn. And this song, apart from being a non-album single, is also for a movie soundtrack and a feature. So it does show a whole different side of Taylor, because it's not from an album, because it does have a feature on it, because it's written with a movie soundtrack, in this case 50 Shades Darker, in mind. It shows a whole different concept of her songwriting and building up a narrative without her personal life, in the fray. I don't know if I would have picked this myself as an introductory to Taylor, because it isn't really essentially her, but it does show another side to her, I guess.
Yeah, I really agree there. I think, this one I've always found is very un-Taylor Swift. It's hard to kind of fit into anything.
Perhaps
it doesn't really fit into rap. It doesn't belong on 1989.
Right.
It's just a real floater.
Perhaps there's a transition between 1989 and Rep, because it does have a more similar sound to Reputation than it does to 1989. But even so, at this point, I do think they were better choices.
Me too, I really do. And I think, to be fair, the explanation, I think, with the fact that it's highlighting that Taylor is a collaborator, collaborating with the Haim, Ed Sheeran, Future, Kendrick Lamar. You know, we've had all sorts of collaborations. On obviously more recently, Bon Iver, the Chicks. So I think that is a good reason for it, to show that Taylor is as well as being a good can stand on a song by herself. She can kind of collab. Personally, this is probably one of my least favourite Taylor collabs. So I think, what would you maybe have picked here? Because clearly there's a reason for a non-album track and a collab. So what would you think would maybe fill that void?
Well, in terms of the list that Consequence of Sound was building up, I don't know where I would have gone. But in terms of my list, we'll get to that, and I'll explain where I went. But as a general introductory song, it's hard because you can't really go for something really niche like Beautiful Ghosts, because people are going to be like, what? Yeah. So I get where the author was going, and I do understand the picking of this song. It is more like let's say, a generic, very quote unquote.
And to be fair, this song for a while was the only Taylor song that was on streaming, so its streaming numbers are massive. Definitely. So technically it's it's actually quite a well-known song. So I suppose maybe that as well, the fact that it's had quite a good reputation and received quite well, and maybe is one that people might have forgotten about now with the release of so much other Taylor music. And I do think it is a good song and does show Taylor's vocals quite well, but I don't know, it's hard to pick one in between. Because trying to pick something, maybe another non-album song like Sweeter Than Fiction, I just don't think that's a great choice maybe to introduce, you know what I mean, because that's a song that's maybe slipped in the back. Or maybe something like Safe and Sound might be quite a good choice, because that was quite successful, but again might be a little bit slow and not really highlight the kind of...
Honestly, as an introductory song, though it does show a very, very different side to Taylor, like I said, because of it was just a pop hit at that point, it makes sense. Next up for Reputation, we have Delicate, which honestly I think is the best pick from Reputation. It shows the other side of Reputation. It doesn't show what people portray Reputation to be or thought Reputation would be. It's a really good bop. It stayed on charts for so long. It's very, very solid choice, honestly.
Yeah, I agree as well. It kind of shows the romantic side. Again, it's quite a slower song though. That's my only kind of qualm with this list, is that there's maybe not enough ones that are probably like the big pop moments, because Taylor has real big pop moments.
Right.
But I do think Delicate is I think maybe I would have changed up the 1989 one to give a big pop moment song. But yeah, I think Delicate is a really, really good choice on Reputation, and would maybe show people that might perceive Reputation as this kind of vengeful, hateful album about a certain time in Taylor's life, when actually it's not. It's the total opposite. It's about finding true love with all that noise and trying to find it through the noise. And I think Delicate is the perfect example of that, and doesn't have any mention of the kind of drama of 2016 and all of that, and just says that my reputation's never been worse, so you must like me for me, which I think is a real kind of standout lyric from Reputation, and perfectly describes Reputation. That, despite her bad reputation, she was still trying to find love for herself. So I think, Delicate is a really, really good choice, and definitely one that I would have, if I was crafting a similar list, it would be one that I would have put on there.
Turning to Lover, the author chose the song Lover to represent this album, and she even said in her write-up, justice for Cruel Summer, I know, but Lover is very romantic, the waltz tempo. I do think that she should have gone with Cruel Summer, honestly, because...
Really?
Yeah, again, thinking of the theme of this list. And like you said, you wanted that big pop moment, I think you got it with Cruel Summer. Yeah, true. Honestly, with the theme of this list being introductory, I think we've got enough romantic. We had Delicate, we had Wildest Dreams. They're both very romantic, they're both very chill. And now turning to the album Lover, I think it's a good opportunity to give that pop moment in Cruel Summer. I mean, what other song? Yeah. In my opinion, but
I think Yeah, because it seems like the reasoning is because of the bridge and to highlight Taylor's bridge abilities, but I think that's been highlighted in Enchanted and All Too Well.
Exactly.
So I think, you are right. I think, that's what this list is really lacking, is a real big pop moment. And I think you're right, Cruel Summer would be the perfect place to kind of put here and would make up for the lack of big pop moments. But I understand the reasoning for Lover, and I think it is a good choice. And it's definitely a strong song from that album. That and Cruel Summer are definitely the two standouts for me personally. So that it would be between either those two. And if this album, because this list, hasn't got a standout pop moment, I think you're right, Cruel Summer is probably a little bit more deserving, but does make sense.
Next up, turning to folklore, we have August. This one I must agree with. Like, it's the most...
Oh, 100%.
It's the friendliest song to, like, a non-experienced listener of folklore and Evermore to get into an album like folklore. It is the pop moment to a certain extent that we're looking for. It's just fan-friendly, GP-friendly, very easy song to get into. At the same time, very beautifully crafted. The lyrics are absolutely amazing. Yeah, I don't think there was any other choice here.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think they're perfect choice.
And finally, closing off their list, we have Willow, which again, I think runs through the same vein as August. There wasn't another song on Evermore that you can kind of show like a first-time listener or a listener of the pop albums of Taylor Swift and say, get into Evermore through Happiness. Oof, it's just a big, it's very difficult. It's like, it's a big ask.
Exactly. Like, Willow isn't the standout song off of that album at all, but it's definitely a good way of opening to kind of open someone that maybe isn't used to the sound of Evermore or aware of Taylor's kind of more indie acoustic folk sound. And I think that it's the most pop moment on that album to then open you up to the kind of then lyrical, impressive arrangements and stuff. So I think this one is definitely makes sense 100%.
So those are the 10 songs that Consequence of Sound decided were a good gateway into Taylor's discography, and like we've said, I do agree that they act as a brilliant gateway. Obviously, like we've said, they're probably not the standout from each of those albums, but they're all very listener friendly Taylor Swift songs.
They're easily digestible.
Exactly.
And not too complicated. You don't have to know kind of a detailed backstory of Taylor's career or experience to know, where's that fitting in and what's that referencing. It's just, they're very like, you can take them for what they are without needing context or anything like that. Unlike, say, songs like Getaway Car, you might be like, what's this about, Whereas like Delicate, it's very clear about what it's kind of discussing.
Yeah, they're also the most like genre blended. Like, we can't, like, the country side of things isn't like country, the pop side of things isn't pop, the bubblegum pop of Lover isn't the extreme, and the indie side of Folklore and Evermore, again, isn't the extreme that we could go to. So what we wanted to do is, taking this list, we wanted to make our own lists, but having that list already been listened to. So imagine this imaginary first-time fan of Taylor has asked for a 10-song list. We've given them the Consequence of Sound list. They've listened to it, and now they've come back to us, and they said, I want to kind of discover some more. What songs would you recommend? So we gave ourselves some rules to follow. Firstly, we weren't really allowed to repeat any of the original author's choices because, according to our little imaginary history, the listener has already listened to them. Then we also wanted to kind of make them slightly thematic, as we've already mentioned. Each of us has gone our own ways, I'm sure. We wanted to include one song from each of her studio albums, as well as one non-album single, just as the original author did, and one of these songs had to be a collaboration. So yeah, we're following the pattern that has already seemingly been established. Finally, before we get into it, it's interesting and very exciting because we haven't seen each other's lists, so we might have exactly the same list and we wouldn't know at the moment. Okay, so now we can get into our lists. So before I start with mine, I do want to say that the theme that I was running with, or the idea, more than a theme, is that I wanted to, after presenting like this, essential Taylor tracks, and you've got into a bit of her music and her sound, I wanted to then highlight Taylor Swift as a songwriter. The songs are going to be a lot of self-written. And I'll explain as I go along, but that is the direction in which I would push a listener. Of course, that's because I, as a listener, enjoy those songs, and I'm sure there's people that probably would have been like, no, you should push towards more pop sounds or push towards more, because you might scare someone away. But me as a listener, that's what I would like to hear, so that's kind of the direction in which I went. What about you?
Yes. So I'm sure, as people know, I'm a big country music fan, so I would push listeners into the country side of Taylor.
Ooh.
I did try and go rogue and push people into pop, but trying to stick to the list it's hard enough with country anyway, because unfortunately there are 2 albums where trying to pull something from country is just impossible.
Oh yeah.
And then with pop, again, trying to pull stuff from. So I have 2 lists, but I went with country in the end. Because the pop one, I was just like, I'm really playing about with the rules, because basically there's only really 3-4 albums that you can pull stuff from pop, and it would have to be, and then so the only other pop moments from the later stuff like Folklore, Evermore have been used already.
Taken, yeah.
So it was really hard to kind of do that, and trying to go down, it was hard to really know what the next. Once someone's kind of opened this initial door into Taylor's discography,
where do you lead them?
Next door to
right,
because it is so vast, and I think that's when, by doing this, it made me appreciate how hard it must have been to just pick 10 songs in general, because you want to pick your favourites. You want to be like, oh, this song.
Of course, but a favourite might not be very acceptable to a wider audience, because it's a favourite, perhaps because it's very niche. Which I think our lists are going to be much more niche than this initial list, but that's why it was interesting to do it. And I do recommend to anyone listening to make their own list and let us know in the comments, what would you have included in your list and why? Because like you said, it's hard, especially when we couldn't base ourselves, like we couldn't use those initial tracks. So what's the next step, basically, So starting off with our first picks, from debut, for my Taylor Swift songwriter recommendation, I went with a self-written song, Our Song.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a good
it's not hard to listen to at all. It has some really nice little gems of lyrics in there. He's got a one hand feel on the steering wheel, the other on my heart. Beautiful. I grabbed a pen and an old napkin and I wrote down Our Song. Lovely. It works for me, I think. It's a really nicely written one. It's not like the standout lyricism of the whole list, obviously.
Oh, no.
But I think as an introduction and from debut, it does show that side of her that is just how good she can craft a song and so quickly. So that's how I'm starting off my list. What about you?
Yeah, no, I do think that's a really good start. So with me, strangely enough, I've started off with the same thing. I've started off with Our Song, sorry.
Oh, brilliant.
I was going to say your song with us because you picked it.
Okay.
So yeah, I've also picked Our Song because of the country element.
Yes.
This was kind of one of her first big country kind of big singles, and just has that songwriter element of country songs that's very kind of conversational, and is really detailing this kind of vivid story, and as you kind of listen to the song, the story develops.
Definitely.
So I think that's one of the reasons why I picked Our Song. If Tim McGraw hadn't been on the list of Consequence of Sound, probably would have been there purely because that is just the most kind of classical country song ever, referencing a country artist, things like that. But because obviously that had been on the previous list, and therefore the listener had already listened to it, by the time they would be given our lists, I think that Our Song is a really good kind of opener to kind of discover Taylor's kind of country side.
Definitely, I agree. And I think we might have a few in common because her country side is very singer-songwritery. So it would be interesting to see how many more we coincide on. But just as an extra here, in case anyone is listening to these lists and they don't want a repeat song or they want another song from debut, I would propose here as a backup song, Teardrops on My Guitar. Because it's very... I think it fits in both lists again. Very singer-songwritery and very country. Okay, so do you want to go ahead with your Fearless pick?
Yeah, so Fearless I really, really struggled with because
right.
Fearless, even though it is a very country album, trying to pick something that is a standout without kind of... Because what I didn't want to do was just kind of pick country songs that would just scare a listener and be like, oh my god, this is just all a little bit redneck, you know?
Right. That's true.
So
that's true.
So the standout for me, country song wise, is "Tell Me Why" on Fearless. Like the song that sounds most kind of country. But I thought I don't want to just pick that because that sounds very I don't know, it's not a million miles away from our song. So I decided to go with Fearless, the song. One, because I just love it, and I think that it kind of just has, it kind of details where that the author kind of mentioned about kind of tropes within Taylor's songs, the kind of like the rain element, and like being stood in the rain, and the very romantic kind of portrayal of young love and stuff like that. I think is something that is kind of really referenced in Fearless and beyond slightly in Speak Now and then backwards in Debut. So I think, yeah, my second one was Fearless for that reason, because it sounds very country, is a good kind of country Taylor song, but also does reference kind of the themes quite well of early Taylor music and can be used to help a listener maybe kind of discover that side of Taylor.
I agree with you there. Yeah, I do think Fearless has a lot of, and I kind of, seeing where you're going, I could kind of hedge my bets on what your next pick is going to be. But yes, it touches on all of those country Taylor tropes that really, really work. So I love your pick. I also wanted to go with Fearless, strangely enough.
Oh, really?
But I didn't, because I wanted to try and stick as much as I could to self-written solo rights. So our song is a solo right, and so for Fearless I went with Forever and Always instead, which changes it up a little bit. It not the piano version, we're still on the more the
I wasn't
pop,
sure if you were going to pick maybe Love Story, because obviously Love Story is a solo.
Yes, I was playing around with that as well, but I thought, honestly, if you're showing someone a list, I think almost...
They probably have heard
it. Almost everyone on this earth has heard Love Story somewhere in their lives. So Forever and Always, I think it really has some songwritery gems in it as well. And I have a lot of fond memories with this song as well, so I decided to go that way instead. But yeah, Fearless
and I think
is a good choice.
The fact as well that it can be put into a piano ballad and can sound quite strongly as a piano
ballad
does show its songwriting element.
The versatility.
And the kind of, So yeah, I think that's a really good choice actually, definitely. When you're highlighting Taylor's songwriting, I think, on Fearless again, that's a really good kind of standout track.
Next up for Speak Now, obviously I was spoilt for choice, because all of Speak Now it was up for grabs. So I went with Dear John, just because.
Oh yeah.
Well, do I need to say too much? I think kind of like All Too Well.
That makes sense.
For me, it's the All Too Well of Speak Now, alongside Last Kiss, I must say. But since we've already spoken...
I'm surprised.
Yeah, I know. Since we've already spoken so much about Last Kiss in the past, which if you do want to hear more about that, we have an episode breaking down all of the history, the lyrics, how things changed, how it all went down. Do listen to that. But I decided to go for Dear John just because the lyrics are so gut-wrenching. I lived in your chess game, but you changed the rules every day. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's how...
No, I think, and then the kind of reference of kind of the picture and ruining people's sky and stuff is then later referencing Coney Island in like Evermore. So I think the kind of that trope as well is kind of followed on and something that's a really strong lyrical song. So I think that is a really good choice, to be fair, for the Speak Now track. Which
way did you go?
So I think I went with, so again, it was hard not to pick favourites. So obviously my favourite on Speak Now is Sparks Fly. But even though that has a very kind of country song, it almost has a country... Obviously, it's from a country album and was a country single. Personally, I feel like that isn't the standout. If you're trying to show someone... If you're trying to introduce someone to country Taylor, that's not the country Taylor song.
Okay.
The most country Taylor song on Speak Now is Mean. I think even though it is very country, I think weirdly it's quite easily digestible as a country song. And even in the UK, I hear that song a lot sometimes in shops and stuff. So I think that's quite a good opener. And I think...
What a great choice.
The discussion.
I agree.
Yeah, and it's kind of commentary on like bullying and stuff like that. It had quite a little big moment of kind of being this anti-bullying track. So I think that Mean is definitely a good choice there.
Yeah, I did think you were going to go for Sparks Fly when you was talking about Fearless, but I guess you covered in Fearless. You kind of covered those tropes. So I completely forgot about Mean, and that is such a good choice. Yeah, love that. Next up is Red, and obviously the big one has been taken. We can't repeat All Too Well. So, from my little list, this one was quite hard because Red has just a few solo rights, and I decided to eventually go with Holy Ground.
Interesting.
Yes, I was between that one and also between Nothing New, which is a solo right, but of course from Taylor's version. I decided to go with Holy Ground because, again, that way we have a little bit more of a boppy kind of moment. It's another up-tempo, so it's singer-songwritery, but not in the way that you're going to be scared off by a 5-minute slow song, because we've just come from Dear John, so I thought maybe. And yeah, Holy Ground honestly had quite a moment during like the Lover era when she covered it, when she sung it.
Oh yeah, that's a gorgeous,
Yeah, in the live lounge, which is, very beautiful performance. And so I thought I would give a little nod to it.
I think that's a really nice choice. Not what I expected at all. Definitely not what I expected. So no, I think that's really nice. This is where now, obviously with Red, then beyond Red, I had a bit of a problem because unfortunately I haven't chose anything from 1989 or Reputation because there just isn't anything. I thought maybe like This Love or something like that. Right. But anyways, we'll get into that. But my Red one, so I have a couple. I have 2 off of Red to make up for the fact that obviously I'm losing some from, because unfortunately, as much as I tried to stick to the rules, it just wouldn't make sense shoving like Ready for It. Oh, this is country, Taylor. Okay, you know what I mean? Yeah. Here's King of My Heart. But no, so my first choice off of Red is the song Red. I think this is just so kind of a stadium country. Like this is like, you know, that bridge and that final chorus, like it just, the kind of the songwriting is, it is very country about the car, and then like describing colours with, I don't know, Red the song I think is a perfect kind of opener, and it kind of moves away maybe from the more kind of twangy country of our song and mean, and maybe kind of opens up a more kind of stadium, like huge country moment but slightly disguised in pop in a way that you could, as a non-country fan, listen to it and still not think, oh, this is so horridly country, you know?
Right.
So I think, that's why I chose Red. And then the next song off of Red, while we're still here, is Better Man. This shows kind of, obviously this was given to Little Big Town, and then won lots of awards, was heavily nominated and incredibly well received in the country world, and shows Taylor's, obviously I would give Taylor's version off of Red, and shows kind of Taylor's lyrical ability. I just love this song, and Taylor's version of it is just so ethereal, and I haven't really got a heartbroken-y country song, which is a very popular trope in country music. It's kind of that, you know, that heartbroken element and just sadness, and I think the Better Man is kind of the perfect song. So that was the 2 that I chose off of Red. What was your next one, which I'm guessing would be 1989?
Okay, so you never picked one from 1989, but one you did mention was This Love, which I also, obviously, it's the only solo write on 1989. So obviously, again, I bent the rules. Well, my own rules, my self-imposed rules, because I didn't want to choose a solo write this time. I wanted to go with Out of the Woods, just because it's the song on 1989 for me. It's just such a good song. And I don't know, This Love obviously is a really well-written song, very poetic lyrics, but Out of the Woods just has some hard-hitting lyrics that, even though we have a co-writer, Jack Antonoff, on it, it's just so well crafted that I thought, well, I'm going to go for that instead.
Oh yeah, I think so. And also, as Taylor has kind of said, that you're still a songwriter if you're a co-writer.
Of course.
So I think that, that does show as well that, you know, just because maybe you didn't write the whole thing doesn't mean that, you know, you're. So I think, that's a really good choice, and Out of the Woods is a gorgeously crafted song, lyrically and kind of just sound-wise. So no, I think that's a really good pick off 1989. And like I said, unfortunately, because 1989 was such a departure from anything Taylor had done before in terms of country, and it didn't even have a country moment like Red had lots of.
No, that's true.
It was really hard I would just be, you know what I mean, like if I tried to pick something off of there, the only one I could pick would be This Love, because of her, with Nathan Chapman, and you know, like that was done in 2012, so it was still kind of technically in the country Taylor, but just isn't country, like in any, it's pop.
I definitely think it is the best choice out of a bunch of songs that are very pop, but it's funny how both of us had that one as our most pointedly, like it should have been on the list, on both of our lists, and yet we avoided it. Nothing against This Love, I do love it, but
I'm gonna give Better Man its
Mm-hmm.
moment, and you know, and technically it was kind of released kind of
around
in
that
the
time.
If you take the
Stretch
kind of the Big Town one was released kind of straight after the 1989 era, so you know, I I've bent the rules a little bit, but have bent them in a way that technically
it works.
It's still allowed. So what was your song then off of Reputation?
Right, so for me, again, this was hard because there are no solo rights on Reputation. So instead, I decided to go with Call It What You Want, because I think it is the most singer-songwritery song on Reputation. Yeah, it's just such a good song. I can't get enough of it. Like, when I was listening to Reputation, like, back in 2017, I think the song that I had on repeat the most was Call It What You Want. It was just, I don't know, it's such an earworm. It has so many good lyrics that I know I make the same mistakes every time. Bridges burn, I never learn. At least I did one thing right. That alone gets it on my list. But what did you do then? Because obviously Reputation does not have any country moments.
So, even though technically the album doesn't...
Oh, I know where we're going.
There was a country moment, so September is what I chose.
Yes.
So I was either going to choose the
Spotify
acoustic, the Spotify one, but technically the listener had already listened to Delicate.
That is true.
Standard, because obviously with the original list, so I thought that would technically be bending the rules again. So I decided to go with September, which is a cover, which is also, because covers are also quite a big thing of Taylor's kind of careers. With like the Speak Now World Tour, there was a cover every single night, and obviously with kind of the live lounge stuff, Taylor's done lots of covers, so I think that covers are quite a big part of Taylor's kind of discography as well. So I think September's a real standout one. I know it got a lot of hate at the time. Oof, very strangely,
a lot of backlash,
but I really like it. I quite like it. I don't see any problem with kind of making something a bit more acoustic and putting it in your own sound. So I chose September there, and if Delicate hadn't been on the previous list, I would have picked that, because that is a little bit more country, and has a kind of banjo moment. But yeah, September. So technically, I did choose something off of Reputation, at least in the era,
definitely.
Because there was only really two songs to pick from. It was either Delicate, Spotify, or September. And because Delicate had been chosen, I decided that September was the best choice.
Yeah. It makes sense. It makes sense. Going to Lover now, I guess maybe you had an easier time with this one. I'm thinking, did you go with Soon You'll Get Better?
Yeah, I did go with it. I think, the collaboration with the Chicks.
Yes.
They're kind of a real integral part of kind of Taylor's early career, and then obviously the fact that then she collaborated with them later and heavily references them in Miss Americana. So I think that, Soon You'll Get Better is a real kind of country moment, and a real sad kind of country. Maybe a lot of the ones so far had been very relationshipy, whereas this is something a bit different.
Oh, definitely.
Taylor's obviously had lots of songs about her kind of mother, what with The Best Day, Never Grow Up, and then obviously Soon You'll Get Better. And family is a real integral part of kind of a lot of Taylor's songwriting, then later on in Folklore and Evermore. So I think, Soon You'll Get Better kind of summed up the kind of more family kind of country, again, which is something that runs very heavily in country songs. It's the kind of like about family and kind of stuff like that. So I chose Soon You'll Get Better, and it's quite an obvious one from Lover. I did maybe think about putting Lover in there, but I felt like it's not really. That would purely just be because it has a guitar, and then I would be being cheating a little and be like, oh, that's country.
Yeah, no, I think you did the right
country
thing.
The moment is Soon You'll Get Better.
I do think you did the right thing.
What about you? What did you pick off of Lover?
Right, so for Lover, I did have choices this time. I had 3 choices: Lover, Daylight, and Cornelia Street, and obviously you know the move here. Cornelia Street, all the way. Cornelia Street is just such a good song. It is from the Lover self-written songs, it is my favourite one. Really amazingly produced as well. Stand out from the album, definitely. And I think a song that outside of the fandom, more of the general public, I think they would really like if we had have got that, Lover Fest or whatever. I think Cornelia Street would have been quite a moment. I think it would have been bigger than it is.
Kind of like King of My Heart moment.
Definitely, yeah. King of My Heart is another good song. Yeah, but I that's why I went for it.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. And obviously you couldn't pick Lover because obviously the listener had already
they've already listened to it. Yeah.
And that is a real good standout. What with that really long kind of bridge, and that's one that Taylor's really proud of in terms of songwriting, and was something that she heavily referenced, but obviously that had been previously kind of used. So I think Cornelia Street is a really good pick, definitely, for the kind of to highlight Taylor's songwriting abilities and the sadness of like. What I quite like about the song is that even though she's in a relationship and you should be kind of happy, it's quite interesting to write from a perspective of just the fear of, oh my god, what do I do if this ends?
Yeah.
Because that's not really something that maybe she's kind of sung about.
It sounds a bit
that much,
depressing,
isn't
but it's not really,
Yeah.
because it's more like wow, this is such a stable point and such an amazing relationship. Like, I could never physically visit this place again because of the
Yeah,
visceral
these
memories
kind of
that would
memories,
obliterate me. Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I really, really love that, and I think that's a really, really good choice. Okay, so I guess next we kind of move on to folklore.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the standout folklore country song is Betty. Like, it's the one. Like, this has to be on there. She literally performed it
Yep.
on the country award show, which was like basically her only performance other than the Grammys during folklore, and that was technically during the Evermore era. So yeah, this is kind of the big country moment. It was pushed on country radio, and it just is the most kind of country song ever. Like, I just love it so much. That kind of final chorus bridge is perfect. And when I first heard it, it just reminded me of Mary's song, and I don't know why. And it's reminded me of kind of debut unreleased Taylor. It was just such it's my favourite on folklore.
A lot of people who were big fans of, or are big fans of, country era Taylor all really, really like kind of got back into Taylor, or really, really loved Betty when they heard it, because it was just such a callback to that early Taylor, even though it's so many years later. So yeah, perfect pick, honestly. For me, I only had one choice, and I was very happy with that choice. My Tears Ricochet.
Yes. Oh,
Stand out
perfect.
on the album, so beautifully written. The metaphors of it all, and how it was like the first song really written of the folklore era, but at the same time it fits so well with the rest of the album. Yeah, definitely for me, My Tears Ricochet. If anyone who was getting into Taylor, I guess this next step, at least in my list, would kind of introduce you a bit more to the Taylor Swift lore of it all. Like, we're taking that deep dive into, oh, okay, so she was a country writer who moved to pop. Oh, okay, with My Tears Ricochet, she has lost her masters, and that, that's why this chapter in her discography is being re-recorded. So I guess that is also another layer to it all.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, is quite interesting, because obviously that songwriter stuff does stem from the fact that she, is from, not from Nashville, but her songs are from that Nashville world of country and songwriter and telling stories, which I suppose is something that is also running through my thing as well, with
definitely
the kind of country element of highlighting Taylor's real roots, and the fact that these roots have followed throughout her career, and then in preparation for Midnights, which we have no clue what the sound is.
No, we could be like
highlighting the roots.
Yeah, poor listener who's got our two track list where it's like, oh my god, it's so much self-written, oh my god, so much country, and now she just comes up with Reputation 2.0, which obviously does have certain elements, because Taylor Swift is her own genre in a way. But
even like New Year's Day and stuff kind of does callbacks.
That is true.
Acoustic sound.
That is true.
And songwriting is something that follows through, and the fact that even when she had departed from country, and even in big albums like Lover, that is a pop album, country follows through, and then songwriting follows through, with like her wanting to have solo rights with Lover and being so proud of that. I think it's just really interesting, and I think that that's the reason why we've kind of done this. It does kind of show the real foundation, even when there is a departure, and even when she does pivot, there's always one foot still in the songwriter world or in the country world somewhere, and she can always return back to it. Like with Betty, going back to a country award show that she had basically been avoiding, to kind of depart from that and move into the pop world, to kind of return back. I think it's really interesting, and I think that these do work. Well, even though we have no clue what Midnights could be, and Midnights could be a return back to those worlds. Could
honestly,
be a return back to the songwriter.
Yeah,
we have no clue at all. But yeah, very interesting. But no, what did you pick then for Evermore?
Yes,
the final kind of one, and there's a lot of very standout songwriting moments on the album. If
I would have gone for the I only can choose solo written songs, then obviously there was only one choice, which I'm thinking that you may have gone for. We'll get to that in a minute. So I decided to throw that out the window, and instead I went for Happiness, because I am that person. Happiness is my favourite song on Evermore, and it just will destroy you. And I think that way we've touched upon all of the different kinds of singer-songwritery songs that we can get, like the happier ones, the in love ones that make you think of one specific memory, like so vividly ones. And now this one, which is just storytelling at its finest, but at the same time destroying you and touching upon like such a tragic story that could happen to anyone, honestly. Like, that's why it's so sad, and it's so well written, and it's getting over it and at the same time accepting changes. I don't know, I've already spoken about Happiness many times on this podcast, but that is why I chose it. So for you, where did you go?
Yes, so I went with Nobody No Crime.
Yes, that's the one.
Yes, because obviously it is an incredibly country moment, and again, a popular trope in country music is kind of playing this character,
killing the husband,
killing a husband, being done for murder. It's something that Kelsey Ballerini's recently kind of written about, and is something that this kind of like broken woman that's like, you know, like got like mascara down her eyes and blood on her hands is something that weirdly runs throughout and is a very popular country trope. And this is a real highlight on Evermore. I did possibly think about Cowboy Like Me, but I felt like that wasn't showing enough and wasn't departing from, because I could have picked, I thought also about something like I Bet You Think About Me, maybe replacing one of the Red songs, because that is obviously a big country moment. But I felt like I Bet You Think About Me, the kind of sound of it had been shown with Mean. I don't know, I feel like they're weirdly quite similar in that kind of sense. Which is why I went for something like Red and Better Man, which then showed kind of a different side of the country, rather than just picking slow, you know, songs with a banjo. You know, so that's why I then went with Nobody No Crime, because Cowboy Like Me would just kind of be another slow moment, which had already been illustrated with Soon You'll Get Better and stuff like that.
What I really love about your list is that you've really taken a bit of country, like, from all of its different storytelling sections. Like, we've got the story of you know, like very classic our song country kind of in love song, then we have the gut-wrenching ones, then we have the Nobody No Crime ones. I think you did a really good job in showing the vast array of country music. Like, it's not always about the same story.
Trucks.
Exactly.
Exactly. You can kind of have a very different kind of you can sing about all sorts of different things, and I tried to pick ones that did reference popular kind of tropes and songwriting within country music. But no, as well, I think, to be fair, yours are really interesting with illustrating that songwriter element, and the fact that you didn't just stick to the solo rights, because I think as proud as Taylor is of those solo rights, I think the co-writes and stuff as well just show her ability as well to write, you know, that highlight that is just as important.
And with an artist like Taylor, we do know that she's involved deeply in the songwriting of every single song. Like, even the ones with...
Even with Shake It Off, recently we've discovered it's basically a solo right.
So I think, like, I got away with not having to kind of just stick with the solo, like the officially solo ones. But now we turn to our last song, which is the wild card non-album song, perhaps a collaboration. In my case, I went with Safe and Sound.
I went with the same thing.
Oh, yay! That's brilliant. That means that it's just, we find it to be a staple in the Taylor Swift cinematic universe, or musical universe, should I say. Safe and Sound is just such a good song. It's a feature, so that ticks that off our list. It's a feature with the Civil Wars, who aren't like a very, very popular group even within the fandom. Like, I never knew of them beforehand, but then got into them after Taylor's collaboration with them. But I think it hits on so many strong points of country sounding Taylor, which I guess is why you picked it. Singer-songwritery Taylor, which in this case showcasing a different type of her songwriting ability, which is kind of like stepping into the shoes of someone else. And an amazing feature. I love this song.
Me too. I think purely because, one, I love it so much, two, it's just so gorgeously sung. And it does show a different side, again, of stepping into the character. What's quite interesting, though, with mine which is something that is quite popular anyway with country music, is collaboration. Obviously, I've got three.
Yes.
But with Nobody No Crime, Soon You'll Get Better, and Safe and Sound.
That's true.
Which is, so I definitely ticked the having to have one feature.
Yeah, you have
I ticked it 3 times, so I can get away with not including something from 1989.
Oh, definitely.
But no, I think, Safe and Sound was 100%, like, it was the only one that I could really pick. Could have picked the Kelly Pickler song Best Days of Your Life, but I felt like that's not really, that would be, Taylor is so, she is a backing artist in there. Obviously she did write it and co-write it, but I thought, no, that's not really good enough. Or I did think maybe something like Crazier, kind of showing the waltz side, but I don't know. Safe and Sound was just calling out to me a little bit too much.
Yeah,
so
I did think of, for myself, I thought Sweeter Than Fiction, perhaps. But again, I wanted to go more with this, like, I guess Sweeter Than Fiction does showcase the songwriter from a different perspective. I don't know. It's Safe and Sound. There's just something about it. So many people in the fandom absolutely adore that song, and that's why I think Folklore is so universally acclaimed as well, because Safe and Sound is so, it can be likened so much to Folklore and the sound that she crafted in the album. So I think that's why so many people do love it. And the Civil Wars feature on that song is just so good. They bring so much to the table. The music video is also absolutely amazing. Thank God for the Hunger Games is all I can say.
The Hunger Games was such a moment. And I think only really people that were like teenagers then understand like how massive those books, films, soundtracks were just huge. Everyone was listening to them. Everyone was consuming them. I used to go to the cinema and watch the Hunger Games, and like basically my entire school would be sat in that cinema, and the entire school would be listening to the soundtrack. The entire school would be reading the books. It was like such a kind of Harry Potter moment again when you're a teenager, and Safe and Sound was such a standout of that soundtrack. Yeah, I love it, and it's such a fun moment, and I just love the Hunger Games. I love Taylor, so it's a perfect kind of mix.
Definitely. And with that is the end of our lists. So I think we both captured different facets, though similar ones, of Taylor's discography, and there's so many different ways that we could have gone, and that we would like, you guys to kind of make up your own lists and perhaps go one of the ways that Cameron didn't go, the pop way, and maybe try and find those pop moments.
Shall I kind of read out some of the possibilities?
Yeah, you can do as a base. Yeah, definitely.
So I was thinking I Knew You Were Trouble.
Right.
Kind of one of the first real pop Taylor songs. Like obviously you had like We're Never Ever Getting Back Together, but that had a country mix and was pushed on country radio. Whereas I Knew You Were Trouble was like there was no denying that this was pop, dubstep, far away from anything she'd done before. So that was one of the ones that I'd picked, and then unfortunately trying to pick anything previously that's what I struggled with.
I guess I would go with You Belong With Me.
I did, yeah. I had You Belong
Speak
With
Now
Me
is very difficult. Very difficult. Mine.
Yeah, it's hard because
maybe.
I did pick Mine. Yeah, there was Mine and You Belong With Me. Debut was almost impossible. Teardrops on My Guitar was the only one that I could think, but that was purely because it just had a pop mix, which doesn't mean that it's a pop song at all.
No.
And then obviously it was going into like Style, Out of the Woods, loads from Reputation, kind of picking things. And then obviously on like Lover, again, so much to pick from. But then again, I struggled when I got to Folklore and Evermore, because I was like, there's just the pop stuff's been picked already in the Consequence of Sound list. August is the pop moment on Folklore, and Willow's the pop moment on Evermore. So yeah, that's why I just kind of debunked that list. I was like, no, okay, let's go with what you actually want to do, which is country. But I thought that would just be a little bit too predictable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was hard trying to pick the pop, trying to stick to our kind of rules. You could quite easily do it and definitely showcase Taylor's
there's different ways
pop.
you can go with, like, instead of a genre, you can base yourself on like heartbreak songs, or the other way around, like just full on happy love songs, relaxing songs you would listen to in the middle of the night. So yeah, we do recommend that if you enjoy like looking through Taylor's discography, putting yourself in like one of these positions and trying to see if you could craft a very short, because that's another thing, like picking from such a vast discography is difficult, because you're always going to be thinking about the ones that you didn't include, and you're like, but I wish I could have just put in, I don't know, Coney Island in there or something like that. So yeah, definitely let us know if you come up with your own lists, and if you enjoyed our ones, let us know as well. And if you did enjoy and you haven't listened to our third episode way back then, you can listen to our episode where we created our own like compilation albums, which I think is something similar to what we've done today, using a theme and going through. That was more like theme based. So yeah, if you enjoyed today, then you might enjoy that episode as well. If you did enjoy this episode, please let us know by liking the video on YouTube and subscribing over on YouTube as well. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, then you can rate us if you do enjoy the podcast itself. And if you want to follow us for more content, then do so on Instagram. Our handle is @SwiftlySpokenPodcast. Thank you very much for listening. you.